For 17 years I saved every single penny for my wedding. While my college friends bought designer clothes, expensive vacations, and luxury apartments, I worked 2 jobs and lived in a cramped studio with second-hand furniture. Every birthday check from grandparents, every Christmas bonus, every overtime shift went straight into my wedding fund. When I finally hit $45,000, I felt like I could breathe for the first time since I was 18 years old. The savings account was in my name, but Mom had access as a co-signer from when I'd first opened it. She'd helped me set it up during freshman year, promising it would stay untouched until my wedding day. "This is your dream fund, sweetheart," she'd said while we sat in the bank lobby. "No one will ever touch this but you. I'm just here in case something happens to you." I should have removed her access years ago. But I trusted her completely. My brother Marcus had always been the golden child in our family. While I worked weekends at the grocery store throughout high school, Marcus played video games in his bedroom. When I graduated college summa cum laude and immediately started my software engineering career, Marcus dropped out junior year to explore his creative side. When I bought my first car with cash I'd saved over 2 years, Mom surprised Marcus with a brand new pickup truck for his 25th birthday. The pattern was clear to everyone except me. I kept believing that if I just worked harder, saved more, achieved more, I'd eventually earn the same level of support and celebration that Marcus received simply by existing. But I never complained out loud. Family is family and families stick together through everything. Last March, Marcus burst into our usual Sunday dinner with his eyes practically glowing with excitement. He'd finally found his calling, he announced to the table. His friend Trevor had a food truck business that was about to revolutionize the local food scene. They just needed one serious investor to take the operation nationwide. The profit projections were incredible. The market research was solid. The opportunity was completely once in a lifetime. He needed exactly $45,000 to buy in as a full partner. The dining room went dead silent. Dad continued methodically cutting his meatloaf, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Mom's fork froze halfway to her mouth, a piece of green bean dangling precariously. I felt my stomach drop straight through the floor, but I forced myself to keep smiling. "That sounds really exciting, Marcus. Have you talked to any banks about getting a business loan?" He laughed like I'd told the world's most ridiculous joke. "Banks don't understand vision, Emma. They just see risk and paperwork. This needs to happen fast." Trevor's got 3 other potential investors breathing down his neck, and one of them is a restaurant chain looking to expand into mobile food service. Mom finally set down her fork with a soft clink against her plate. $45,000 is a significant amount of money, honey. I know it's a lot. That's exactly why I need family behind me. People who actually believe in my potential instead of just seeing numbers on a spreadsheet. Marcus looked directly at me with his most sincere expression. "Emma's got that wedding fund just sitting there earning basically nothing in interest. She's not even engaged yet." My chest tightened painfully. "Marcus, David and I have been talking seriously about our future. We've looked at rings together and—" "Talking about marriage isn't the same as being engaged," Marcus interrupted smoothly. "And this investment is guaranteed money, Em. I'll pay you back the full amount plus 20% interest within 6 months. You'll have enough for 2 dream weddings." I looked around the table desperately. Dad was now studiously examining his potato as if it contained the secrets of the universe. Mom was staring at her plate like she could disappear into the floral pattern. The silence stretched until it became physically uncomfortable. "I need some time to think about this," I said as calmly as I could manage. Marcus's face immediately fell into his practiced disappointed expression. "Think about what, exactly? I'm your brother. I've never asked you for anything major before." That statement wasn't remotely close to being true. Marcus had borrowed money from me dozens of times over the years: car repairs, security deposits, credit card payments, emergency dental work. None of it had ever been paid back, but I'd never kept track because family doesn't keep scorecards. The conversation awkwardly moved on to other topics, but I could feel Marcus's disappointment radiating across the table for the rest of the meal. Every time I glanced in his direction, he looked wounded and betrayed. When I finally left that evening, Mom walked me out to my car in the driveway. "You know, sweetheart, Marcus really has struggled to find his path in life. This could genuinely be the opportunity that finally gets him on his feet financially. Mom, that money represents 17 years of saving. It's literally every spare dollar I've earned since I was 18. I know, baby, and I'm incredibly proud of how responsible and disciplined you've been with money. But you're only 28 years old. You have plenty of time to save again. Marcus is 31 and he's been floundering for years. He needs this chance now while he's still young enough to build something meaningful. I drove home that night with her words echoing endlessly in my head. Maybe she was right about everything. Maybe I was being selfish by hoarding money while my brother struggled. Maybe this was what real family loyalty looked like, sacrificing your own dreams to lift up the people you love. 3 days later, while I was in a morning meeting at work, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Talked to the bank this morning. Transferred the funds to help Marcus get started. You're going to be so proud of your little brother when this takes off. I excused myself from the conference room and immediately called the bank. Mom was absolutely right. My account balance was now $847.32, just the minimum required to keep the account open. When I called Mom, she sounded genuinely excited and proud. Oh honey, I just knew you'd understand once you had time to process everything. Marcus was so worried you'd be upset, but I told him you'd realize this was the right thing to do for the family. You're going to make so much money back on this investment. Mom, you didn't ask me for permission. Well, I knew you'd say yes once you thought about it properly and got past the initial shock. You're not a selfish person, Emma. You're the most generous and family-oriented person I know. I sat in my car in the office parking lot after that phone call and cried for 20 straight minutes. Then I wiped my face, reapplied my makeup and walked back inside to finish my workday. What was done was completely done, and there was no point in creating family drama over money that was already spent. Over the next 3 months, I watched Marcus's social media accounts fill with photos documenting the food truck's transformation. The vehicle was absolutely beautiful, sleek black exterior with neon green lettering, state-of-the-art kitchen equipment, professionally designed logo and branding. Marcus and Trevor looked incredibly happy and optimistic in every single photo they posted. The grand opening was scheduled for early June, and the local food bloggers were already generating buzz. At our next family dinner in May, Marcus gave me the biggest hug I'd received from him in years. Emma, you are genuinely the best sister in the entire world. This business is going to be absolutely incredible. You'll get your full investment back plus the 20% interest by Christmas, exactly like I promised. I smiled and nodded enthusiastically. What other response was there? But privately, I was starting to panic about my financial situation. David had been talking more seriously about proposal timelines, mentioning that he wanted to plan something special for my 29th birthday in September. I needed to figure out how to explain the missing wedding fund without admitting that I'd made what might have been a terrible financial decision. Instead of panicking, I decided to take a completely different approach to the problem. The following Monday morning, I walked into First National Bank and sat down with Jennifer, a mortgage specialist I'd researched online. I'd been casually thinking about buying a house for several years but had never felt financially ready to take that step. Maybe it was finally time to explore my options. I'd like to discuss my options for getting a home loan, I told Jennifer professionally. Absolutely. Do you have a specific target price range in mind for your home search? Honestly, I'm not sure what I might qualify for. I've been saving money for a while, but I'm not sure if it's enough for a reasonable down payment in today's market. Jennifer pulled up my credit report on her computer, and her eyebrows raised noticeably. Miss Chen, your credit score is 847. That's truly exceptional. I blinked in surprise. Is that considered good? Most people would be absolutely thrilled with anything over 750. You've got a perfect payment history going back 11 years, excellent credit utilization ratios, good account diversity, and no negative marks whatsoever. She continued scrolling through my financial profile. Your income history shows very steady growth year over year. What do you do for work? I'm a senior software engineer at Morrison Tech. Excellent company with a great reputation for stability. Very impressive. She was typing rapidly into her system. Based on your credit profile, income documentation, and employment history, you'd qualify for up to $2.2 million in financing. The room suddenly felt like it was tilting sideways. I'm sorry, could you repeat that number? $2.2 million in total financing. Obviously, you wouldn't want to max out that amount. I'd strongly recommend staying under $1.8 million to keep your monthly payments comfortable and maintain a healthy debt-to-income ratio. but you've got exceptional borrowing power for someone your age. I stared at her in complete shock. In 17 years of obsessive saving and financial discipline, I'd managed to accumulate $45,000. This mortgage specialist was casually telling me that banks were willing to lend me 49 times that amount based purely on my credit history and income. Could you print out a pre-approval letter for me? Of course. Would you like me to connect you with one of our preferred real estate agents to start looking at properties? Not quite yet. I need some time to process this information first. I drove home that evening with the pre-approval letter sitting on my passenger seat, my mind completely spinning. I'd always been extremely conservative with money, living well below my means and saving aggressively. I'd never taken on any debt except my fully paid-off student loans and car payments. I had no idea that this careful financial management had given me access to this level of borrowing power. That weekend, David and I went to brunch with my parents and Marcus, just like we did most Sundays. The food truck business was progressing well, Marcus reported enthusiastically. They'd had some really busy days downtown, though the unpredictable spring weather had been challenging for outdoor dining. Revenue was building slowly but steadily, exactly as they'd projected. These things always take time to build momentum, Mom said supportively. Rome wasn't built in a day after all. Marcus nodded earnestly. Absolutely. Trevor keeps reminding me that year one is always about building the customer base and establishing our brand. The real profits start flowing in years 2 and 3. I noticed that he didn't mention anything about paying me back by Christmas as originally promised, but I kept my mouth shut about it. After brunch, David suggested we walk through some of the open houses in Mom's neighborhood. It was a beautiful historic area with tree-lined streets, carefully maintained Victorian homes and excellent schools. Everything in the area had always seemed completely out of my financial league. Just for fun, David said cheerfully. It's always nice to dream about what we might want someday. We wandered through a gorgeous Victorian house that was listed for $1.2 million. The place had original hardwood floors, intricate crown moldings, a completely updated gourmet kitchen, and a master suite with a clawfoot bathtub. It was absolutely perfect in every way imaginable. Can you imagine actually living somewhere like this? David whispered as we stood in the sun-drenched living room with its bay windows and built-in bookshelves. I pulled the pre-approval letter out of my purse and silently handed it to him. David read the letter once. Then he looked at me with confusion. Then he read it again more slowly. Emma, what exactly is this document? I applied for a mortgage pre-approval last week. Just to see what we might realistically qualify for. This says $2.2 million in approved financing. I know what it says. This is your individual approval? Just your name? Yes, just mine. David stared at the letter like it was written in a foreign language. Your credit score is 847? Apparently so. Emma, do you understand what this actually means? We could buy this house. We could buy this exact house, furnish it completely, and still have money left over for renovations. I looked around the beautiful room again, taking in the bay windows, the original built-ins, the gorgeous architectural details. 6 months ago, I'd thought my $45,000 wedding fund represented a small fortune. Now I was holding a letter stating that banks were willing to lend me millions based entirely on my financial track record. I had absolutely no idea, I said honestly. That evening I called the listing agent and submitted a formal offer on the Victorian house. It was accepted within 6 hours. The next Sunday at our regular family dinner, I mentioned casually that David and I were in the process of buying a house together. That's absolutely wonderful news. Mom exclaimed. Where are you looking? Actually, we're already under contract. The Victorian on Maple Street, you know, the one with the blue shutters and the wraparound porch. Dad nearly choked on his wine. Wait, the old Hendricks place? That just went on the market last month. It did. We close escrow next month. Mom was staring at me with a confused expression. Honey, that house is extremely expensive. The purchase price is $1.2 million, I confirmed. We got pre-approved for the mortgage without any issues. The silence that followed was absolutely deafening. Marcus was the first person to speak. Hold on, you got approved for a $1.2 million mortgage? How is that even possible? Good credit score, stable income, solid employment history. The bank seemed to consider us a very safe lending risk. But Mom looked genuinely bewildered. How will you possibly afford the monthly payments? Those have to be enormous. About $4,800 per month after our down payment. That's well within our comfortable budget range. Your budget? Marcus's voice was getting noticeably higher. Emma, you work at a tech company. Exactly how much money do you make? David squeezed my hand supportively under the table. Emma's been extremely successful in her career progression. But she just gave me her entire life savings 3 months ago, Marcus continued, his voice rising. If she had access to this kind of mortgage money, why did she? He stopped mid-sentence, his face turning bright red. Mom's expression was rapidly shifting from confusion to something much sharper and more calculating. Emma, when you gave Marcus that investment money, you told us it was all your savings. I never said it was all my savings, Mom. I said it was my wedding fund, which it absolutely was. But if you can afford a $1.2 million house, then I clearly didn't need that specific wedding fund to get married, I finished calmly. David and I can have the wedding we want without that particular money. The table fell completely silent again. I could practically see the mental calculations happening behind everyone's eyes. Mom finally spoke, her voice strained. Emma, are you saying that you're wealthy? I'm saying I've been extremely careful and disciplined with my money for a very long time. I live well below my means and save aggressively. The bank considers me an excellent credit risk based on my financial history. Marcus was staring down at his plate. I had absolutely no idea about any of this. Why would you have any idea? We don't typically discuss our detailed finances as a family. But Emma, Mom's voice was getting more strained, if you have access to this much money, why did you make such a big deal about the wedding fund? The question hung in the air like a challenge. David's hand tightened protectively on mine. Because it was never about the money, Mom. It was about being asked for permission before someone made financial decisions with my assets. I pulled out my phone and showed them the real estate listing photos. This is what we're buying. We close on July 15th. You're all welcome to visit once we're settled in. The professional photos were absolutely stunning. The house looked even more beautiful than I'd remembered, and the photography highlighted every perfect architectural detail. Dad let out a low whistle. Emma, this place is practically a mansion. It's a 4-bedroom house with original character. Perfect for the family David and I want to build together. I stood up and kissed everyone goodbye politely. Thanks for dinner, Mom. See you all next Sunday. David and I walked out to our cars, leaving behind a table of completely stunned family members. As we drove away, I noticed Mom's car pulling out behind us. She followed me all the way back to my apartment building. Emma, wait, she called as I got out of my car. We really need to talk about this. I turned around slowly. Mom looked absolutely frantic. Honey, I don't understand what just happened back there. What specifically don't you understand? If you have enough money to buy $1 million house, why didn't you just tell us no when Marcus needed that investment money? I looked at her for a long moment. Because you didn't ask me if I wanted to give Marcus that money. You just took it from my account and told me afterward that I should be proud. But Emma, if you have this much financial resources. Then what, Mom? Then it doesn't matter that you accessed my account without permission? Then it's perfectly okay because I can afford the loss. Mom's face crumpled. That's not what I meant at all. What did you mean exactly? She was quiet for a very long time. I honestly thought you were struggling financially. I thought that wedding fund represented everything you had managed to save. Did you ask me about my overall financial situation before you made that assumption? No, I didn't. Did you ask me if I could afford to lose that money without it affecting my quality of life? No. Did you ask me if I had other savings accounts, investment portfolios, or financial resources? Mom shook her head miserably. So you made a major decision about my money based entirely on assumptions about my financial situation that you never bothered to verify with me directly. Emma, please understand. I was trying to help Marcus build a future. By taking money that didn't belong to you without asking permission from the person who earned every single dollar of it. Mom started crying openly. I thought I was doing the right thing for the family. I thought you'd understand and support Marcus's dream. I felt my chest tighten with emotion, but I kept my voice steady and calm. Mom, if Marcus had come to me directly and asked for an investment in his business, we could have had a real conversation about it. Maybe I would have agreed to invest. Maybe I would have offered different terms or a formal loan agreement. Maybe I would have wanted to review his business plan first. But instead, you just took the money and informed me after the transaction was already complete. I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry, Emma. I know you are. But the money is already gone and Marcus has built his business with it. There's no way to undo what happened. What can I possibly do to make this situation right? I looked at my mother crying on the sidewalk outside my apartment building. You can ask for permission next time. Before you make decisions about other people's money, you can have an actual conversation with them first. She nodded frantically. Yes, absolutely. Always. And Mom? You might want to have a realistic conversation with Marcus about timelines for paying me back. Because I'm genuinely not expecting to see that money again. Mom's face went completely white. What do you mean by that? Food trucks are incredibly risky businesses. Industry statistics show that most of them fail within the first 2 years. I hope Marcus succeeds wildly, but I'm not counting on getting my investment back. But he promised to pay you back with interest. He promised to pay me back from the future profits of a business that didn't exist yet. Those aren't promises that anyone can realistically guarantee to keep. I kissed her cheek gently. I love you, Mom. And I love Marcus too. But love doesn't mean giving people unlimited access to your bank accounts. The next morning, my phone was buzzing constantly with text messages from Marcus. Could we meet for coffee? He had some important things he wanted to discuss about the business and our family situation. We met at the Starbucks near his apartment building. He looked absolutely terrible, exhausted, stressed, and like he hadn't slept properly in days. Emma, I swear to God I had no idea, he said before I could even sit down. I had absolutely no idea you had access to that kind of money. I know you didn't know. If I'd had any clue about your real financial situation, I would have approached this completely differently. I would have offered you equity in the business or structured it as a formal loan agreement with proper documentation or... Marcus, how is the business actually performing so far? He sighed heavily and ran his hands through his hair. It's been significantly harder than Trevor and I expected. He was overly optimistic about the initial revenue projections. We're not losing money, but we're definitely not making the profits we anticipated either. What does that realistically mean for paying me back? That's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. Emma, I don't think I can pay you back by Christmas like I originally promised. Maybe not for a couple of years, honestly. I'm really sorry. I nodded calmly. I figured that was probably the case. You're not angry with me? Marcus, I'm angry that Mom took the money without asking for my permission first. I'm not angry that your business is struggling to find profitability. Starting a business is incredibly difficult. But I feel absolutely terrible about this. You're buying this incredible house and here I am telling you I can't pay back the money that was supposed to help fund your wedding. The house purchase and our future wedding aren't dependent on that $45,000. I have other savings and financial resources. Marcus stared at me in amazement. How much money do you actually have, Emma? I thought carefully about how to answer that question. Enough. But how much is enough in actual numbers? Enough that losing $45,000 isn't going to fundamentally change my life either way. Jesus Christ. Marcus leaned back in his chair. I feel like such a complete idiot about all of this. You're not an idiot at all. You didn't know about my financial situation because we don't talk openly about money in our family. Maybe we should start having those conversations. Over the next 2 hours, Marcus and I had the most honest and detailed conversation we'd ever had about personal finances. He told me about the daily struggles of running a small business, the constant stress about cash flow, the pressure to succeed after everyone had invested in his dream, the fear of disappointing the people who believed in him. I told him about my salary progression over the years, my investment strategy, my approach to building wealth slowly and conservatively over time. I always thought you were just really good at saving small amounts of money, he admitted. I didn't realize you were making serious money and investing it intelligently. I'm not making serious money compared to tech executives or investment bankers. I make a good salary for my field and I save aggressively instead of spending on lifestyle inflation. Compound interest becomes very powerful when you start young and stay consistent. Mom's been telling everyone she knows about your house purchase. She's incredibly proud but also kind of freaked out about the whole situation. She's worried that I'm permanently angry with her. Are you angry? I considered the question carefully. I'm disappointed in how she handled the situation. But I'm not angry in a way that's going to damage our relationship. Being angry would require me to actually need that money for my survival. That's the thing that really gets to me. You're not even upset about losing the money itself. I'm upset about the principle behind taking it. If I had needed that money to pay my rent or cover medical bills, or handle a financial emergency, taking it without asking could have been absolutely devastating to my life. The fact that I can afford to lose it doesn't make the taking itself acceptable. Marcus nodded slowly. I never thought about it from that perspective before. Most people don't have $45,000 sitting in a savings account, Marcus. For most people, that amount represents months or years of financial security. You can't just assume someone can afford to lose their savings, even if they're family. Even when it's family? Especially when it's family. You have to live with the consequences of your financial assumptions for the rest of your relationship. We finished our coffee in comfortable silence. As we got up to leave, Marcus grabbed my arm gently. Emma, I promise I will pay you back eventually. It's going to take longer than I originally thought, but I will make this right. Marcus, here's the thing. I mentally wrote off that money the day it left my account. If you end up paying me back, that's great. If you don't, that's okay. But I don't want this debt hanging over our relationship for years. What do you mean exactly? I mean, don't skip family dinners because you feel guilty about owing me money. Don't avoid calling me because you're embarrassed about the business struggling. Don't let this financial situation ruin our sibling relationship. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. You're a much better sister than I deserve. You're a good brother, Marcus. You're just learning how to be a successful businessman. Those are completely different skill sets. 6 months later, David proposed with an engagement ring that cost more than my entire original wedding fund. We started planning a celebration that would have been completely impossible on $45,000 but was easily manageable within our actual combined budget. Mom continued apologizing for months afterward, until I finally told her she was completely forgiven and needed to stop bringing up the situation. Marcus sent me detailed business updates every quarter and insisted on paying me back $500 whenever he could afford it. Dad started asking me for investment advice, which was both flattering and slightly strange. But the biggest change was in how our entire family approached conversations about money. Instead of making assumptions about each other's financial situations, we started asking direct questions. Instead of expecting blind financial support during emergencies, we started having actual conversations about loans, investments, and family assistance. And I learned something valuable that was worth far more than $45,000. Having money isn't just about the numbers in your bank accounts. It's about having the freedom to make choices based on your values instead of your desperation. It's about being able to afford generosity when you choose it, but also being able to afford boundaries when you need them. The wedding fund was gone forever, but it had taught me something worth far more than any amount of money. It taught me the crucial difference between being taken advantage of and choosing to be generous. And it taught me that sometimes the most expensive lessons end up being the most valuable ones in the long run. When David and I finally got married in the garden of our Victorian house 18 months later, surrounded by family and friends, I realized that I'd gotten something better than the wedding I'd originally planned years ago. I'd gotten a wedding that reflected who we actually were as people, not who I'd thought we needed to be when I first started saving at 18. And Marcus? His food truck business eventually found its footing and became profitable. He paid me back every single penny with interest, exactly like he'd promised. But more importantly, he learned to ask before making assumptions about other people's finances. And that lesson was worth more than any business investment I could have possibly made.